Hello, welcome to this month's book club. Today we're going to be discussing Spellbound. Spellbound is a book by an author named David Kwong. Before we get into this, let's just go over the book. I'll just sort of read the description for you guys. So, Spellbound, 7 principles of illusion to captivate audiences and unlock the secrets of success. And then here's the description of the book. A professional magician and illusionist, a head magic consultant for the hit film Now You See Me, reveals how to bridge the gap between perception and reality to increase your powers of persuasion and influence. David Kwong has astounded corporate CEOs, TED Talk audiences, and thousands of other hyper-rational people, making them see, believe, and even remember what he wants them to. Illusion is an ancient art that centers on control, commanding a room, building anticipation, and appearing to work wonders. Illusion works because the human brain is wired to fill the gaps between seeing and believing. Successful leaders like Steve Jobs, Warren Buffett, and Ted Turner are masters of control and command who understand how to sway opinions and achieve goals. In his research and practice, David has discovered 7 fundamental principles of illusion. With these rules, anyone can learn to: number 1, mind the gap. Recognize and employ the perceptual space between your audience's abilities to see and their impulse to believe. 2, load up. Prepare to amaze your audience. 3, write the script. Discover the importance of shaping the narrative that surrounds your illusion. 4, control the frame. Explore the real-life value of a magician's best friend, misdirection. 5, design free choice. Command your audience by giving them agency. 6, employ the familiar. Take secret advantage of habits, patterns, and audience expectations. 7, conjure and out. Develop backup plans that will keep you 1, 2, 3, or more steps ahead of the competition. With Spellbound, you'll discover a different way to sell your idea, product, or skills, and make your best shot better than everyone else's. Okay, so this is a book that came out recently from a gentleman named David Kwong. And let's you know what? I wouldn't usually do this. But let's see what the reviews are saying. Because on Amazon, there's 18 reviews, and to be quite honest, I'm going to give you my opinions on the book. I'm going to tell you what this book is about. But I think it's important to read the reviews, and then I'll sort of tell you what's going on. So review number 1: embrace your proscenium. I came across this article how thinking like a magician can help you get ahead at work, by David Kwong, and decided to buy the book. I was intrigued. In many ways, Kwong used examples of historical events by infamous persons to metaphorically expound on his principles. Whilst in some cases there was a lot of talk about magic, which I was not too fond of, I can appreciate his expertise on the subject. I have learned that a massive amount of time should be put into preparation, how to capture and engage your audience. Failure does not mean final and requires that you pivot, and Kaizen is a part of the process. All in all, a very resourceful and insightful book. Okay, next review. Spellbound, a very interesting read, bringing magic to personal success. Brilliant. I even watched the movie and was spellbound. Pardon the pun. Did not see the twist till the end. I'm assuming she's talking about Now You See Me. Next review in 5 stars. Informative and entertaining. Such an entertaining and useful read. I'm buying extra copies for friends and families looking to pull from innovative and new sources, resources, magic to help them climb the corporate and non-corporate ladders. Uh, Next review, only 2 stars. I'll send you my copy if you pay shipping. Not what you think. The chapters sound interesting, but the text within seems to have nothing to do with the catchy titles. This was a big waste of time. Next review, Xavier. Lots of words, little substance. Okay, interesting. Next review, 2 stars. Don't be taken in by the title. Nothing that really stands out in this book. I expected more. Uh, next review, I mean, interesting and useful. Changed the way I thought about magic and business. Da, da, da. Okay, so basically, you have a bunch of reviews that are sort of all over the place. Um, and to be honest, it's one of the things about having a book. As soon as it gets reviewed, you can have great reviews. Most of your reviews are from people. The thing is, most people who buy stuff buy because they like it. They like the idea behind it. Most people spend money on things that they like. So usually, items in books have fairly decent reviews. And but if you do have a few bad reviews, it can really tank you if you don't have good reviews. So this book only has 3.8 out of 5. That's on Amazon. And it's unfortunate because it's not a bad book. It's not a bad book, but what happens, and I think with a lot of these people, is, and it's for you to understand this, I'll have to sort of go behind the story. But what a lot of people do is they write these books as things that they can sell to a corporate audience. People want to package books as something that they can sell. So, if you only write a book about magic, like the history of magic or about magic tricks, it's a very niche audience. And so, what a lot of these people do uh, are write books for a corporate minded audience. And what this means is everything is designed that way. So, it's designed with the idea that I'm somehow going to give you the secret knowledge from magic and it's going to help you improve your business. I see this over and over again. I've seen a lot of books like this. I read most of them. I read most books that come out on magic, if I can get the time to. Just to and to be quite honest, most of them are pretty unspectacular, but you can understand the market that they're writing for. Uh, and so the whole idea behind this was I'm going to give you 7 secrets of magic that magicians use to prepare their shows. Like, this is how this is, the fundamental principles of illusion. And with these rules, you're going to learn how to, because somehow these rules are universal, you're going to learn how to apply this to your business and become more successful. You're going to use the secrets of magic, the principles of magic to become more successful at business. This is the idea behind this book and many other books like it. And um, you understand why this book is written because it's written for that audience. It's not really written for an audience of magic fans. Somebody like me, probably most magicians I know, who have not read this book, and probably most magicians don't even expect that I have read this book, but I read a lot of books. Because we know it's not written for magicians, it's written for the public, but not only that, it's more written for this corporate audience, because when these people are doing shows for the corporate world, they want something that they can add to their package. When you are selling a show, you have a price and you have different prices depending on what's included. For example, if you have merchandise or something that you can sell as a package, like a deck of cards or a book, it's even better because you can up the price of your package. Everybody in the audience gets it. The company pays for it. And what a lot of these people like to do is they like to package books because books are considered to be uh, educational. So if you can have a book that has some sort of educational, uh, the idea behind the book is it's educational. You can then sell it to these companies because these companies hire you to speak or they do magic, and it's like, okay, well now you're gonna not only are you gonna get entertained or hear this person speak, now they're gonna give you a hard copy, the book that's going to tell you how to do the stuff and make use the stuff to your advantage in your own personal life and business. And uh, I must have read. I'm not gonna over exaggerate, but I must have read about a dozen books from different magicians, all of them who are alive, that are pretty much not the same, but they all follow this model. This is what I would call sort of a corporate book. Now, before I get into the actual book, I just want to talk about David Kwong a little bit. I actually saw David Kwong. I think he was performing or speaking, maybe a little bit of both, at one of the Magic Cons a few years back, and um, I guess he's known for being a crossword puzzle magician. Uh, let me make sure I get this right. David Kwong. David Kwong. Yeah, he calls himself the enigmatist, and he used to. I mean, maybe he still is a crossword puzzle person. Uh, who you know he designed crossword puzzles for the New York Times and other newspapers. He had a show, The Enigmatist, and oh wow, he did it at the Highline Hotel in New York. That's actually a pretty nice hotel. I did not know about this show. Um, interesting, interesting. It was produced by Greg Berlanti and Robbie Rogers. Never even heard of it. Uh, interesting, interesting. Wow, it did 88 sold 88 sold out shows in New York, and now it's back for a 10-week engagement. Honestly, I've never even heard of this show. That's quite fascinating to me. That is quite fascinating to me. So his whole thing is like based on puzzles, and I don't really know how he became well known. He spoke at TED. I really don't know how this guy became known. Uh, I found out about him a few years ago because he was presenting at a magic convention, and he was combining magic with crossword puzzles. He might have done something with a memorized stack as well. To be quite honest, I can't remember fully. But he you know what? Let me just read his bio. I I might I might have remembered there's something. David Kwong. Okay. Yeah, yeah. I remember now. So he did have a connection to Ricky Jay. There was some like weird thing where I don't want to be incorrect, but there was some weird thing. So he worked as an archivist apparently for Ricky Jay, but then there was like some weird thing where and this was in the magic community, some weird thing where uh maybe it wasn't him, maybe it's somebody else claiming that he was Ricky Jay's student, and then other people came out and said like, no, he's not Ricky Jay's. And there was a bit of controversy around that, and that's something that's often happens in Magic. People get like tied to projects or different names in Magic, and then they sort of gets out of control. The classic story is Howard Thurston back in the day who fooled Herman. It's like now we have the TV show Penn and Teller Fool Us, where it's like you go on TV and you can fool Penn and Teller. But the precursor to that was Howard Thurston, who he designed this magic trick and he invited this famous magician from a family of magicians, uh, Herman, and the whole American public knew Alexander Herman as being the famous magician, but he also had I think it was his brother or his nephew, Leon Herman. And so Howard Thurston didn't get the real Herman. He got Leon Herman, which was like, you know, not not the real Herman. He was like a relative of Herman. And anyways, he fooled him with his version of the Rising card, and he invited photographers and newspaper person. Like he invited the media to this like what was supposed to be this impromptu thing, and so he fooled him with it, and then he had it documented and put in the newspapers like the man who fooled Herman, the man who fooled Herman. And Howard Thurston, uh, Howard Thurston used that in his press and publicity for many years, and people were like, "Wow, he fooled Herman." They didn't realize that it wasn't like the famous Herman, Alexander Herman, and that it was Leon Herman. So, anyways, that's a funny story in Magic, but that often happens in Magic where people get tied to different names, and it isn't sort of what it seems. So I think sort of something similar happened to David Kwong with Ricky Jay. Uh, I don't know if you can find anything on it online. I guess you can just find online that he was an archivist, but I know in the Magic world there was a little bit of controversy because I heard some people saying certain things. But anyways, I mean, without gossiping and all that stuff, there was some controversy around that, and I didn't know who this guy was. So, anyways, I'll read you his bio that's on his website. With his expertise in enigmas and magic, David Kwong delights and challenges audiences around the world with his intellectual brand of puzzles and prestigit, prestidigitation. A veteran cruciverbalist, crossword puzzle constructor. I don't even know if these are real words. I know prestidigitation is, but it's like, man, that's a tongue twister. And cruciverbalist, that's actually not that bad to say. Kwong routinely puzzles for the New York Times. He routinely creates puzzles for the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, and the Wall Street Journal. He concludes his one-man show with his original crossword puzzle magic trick. Kwong recently produced Deception, ABC show about a magician who joins the FBI. He's also the puzzle and secret code consultant for the hit NBC show Blind Spot. He was the head magic consultant on the 2013 worldwide hit film Now You See Me. Other films Kwong and his Misdirectors Guild have worked on include uh, The Imitation Game, Ant-Man, Mission Impossible, Rogue Nation, and The Magnificent Seven. Kwong was a featured speaker at TED 2014. His talk on how human beings are wired to solve involved hiding secret messages in the New York Times crossword puzzle. Kwong's book was published, Harbor Business, in May 2017. Kwong is a graduate of Harvard University, where he studied the history of magic. Really? I didn't know you could go to Harvard University studying the history of magic. I gotta go back to school. What on earth am I doing? How okay. How can I get to Harvard University to study the history of magic? If anybody knows, if anybody has any ideas of how I can go to a uh, prestigious university and get a PhD in magic, please let me know. Because I'm not really from that world. I don't know how it works, but I'm pretty sure I could do it. I mean, not to boast, not to boast. I think I could. I think I could get like maybe not a PhD. I could get like a bachelor's degree in magic, something like that. BA, or doctors. I could get a doctor's in magic. Anyways, it's amazing. It's amazing. How do you go to Harvard to study magic? That's pretty cool. So all right. So this guy, I really don't know where he's come from. Uh, I really don't. I really don't know. It's fascinating to me. It's fascinating to me. Because it's like you, and he's consulted on a lot of stuff, and you're like, what? I didn't even know. But he sort of found his niche of consulting and being, you know, what seems to be like an expert in certain things, and he's been able to sell that. So that's very good for him. Anybody who can do that, I applaud them because it is very tough to do that. It's very tough and it's very easy. Uh, there is, I have, I have so many stories from the magic consulting world that would blow your mind. I was on the phone last night with a magician friend of mine, and we were talking about consulting and magic, and we were sort of sharing stories about the different projects that we worked on and the things we've heard. And it is a very interesting business. There's definitely some people who are legitimate and they're very well qualified. You look at a guy like Jim Steinmeier, so much, just a really smart guy, really knows what he's talking about. But the thing is, the market is saturated with, like, anybody. A lot of people get into the consulting and they get attached to projects based on their personal connections. Maybe they're from a wealthy family or they move in like wealthy circles, have powerful connections, and they may not know. And by the way, this is not only in magic, this is how it works in everything. Most things are based on personal connections. So usually the most competent people, you know, you would think a capitalist society uh, would would create an environment where the people who are most talented and like the best people for the job, the most suitable people for the job would get it. But that often turns out not to be the case. People in government and in business and many, many fields get involved onto projects based on their family connections, based on their personal connections. If you look at it right now, that is sort of the big thing happening in U.S. politics right now. The president of the United States has just been impeached. The House has voted to impeach him because of a phone call that he made to Ukraine asking talking about the son of Joe Biden, who was the vice president of the U.S. under Obama, and this guy Hunter Biden, and a lot of politicians seem to get their jobs. Apparently, he got a job at a Ukrainian natural resource company, like an oil and gas company, getting paid $50,000 a month, and with no qualifications or anything. And you sort of like, this is not like this is not a like a rare thing. This is apparently something that happens all the time. People get jobs and they get positions based on their family connections. Um, so Yeah, it's very interesting to watch it happen in a field that you're knowledgeable about. In other fields, you don't really know what's going on, and so and this is like one of the weird things when you see when you see newspaper articles and magazine articles and it comes out and it's talking about a field, you read it and it's like a look behind the curtains at this sort of field that you don't know anything about. Like, people make like mini documentaries and stuff, little production companies like Vice make things. And you're like, oh, you watch this short thing or you read this article and you're like, oh, wow, I'm learning so much about this industry I never knew about. And sometimes these things are made by the equivalent of some of these people who have made this stuff in magic, who are people who are not very knowledgeable. It seems very popular. I was talking to, sorry for going off on this tangent, but I was talking to, I won't give away his name or anything, but I was talking to a very, a very well respected magician, universally respected, I think, in the magic world and by the public. We were having a conversation the other day, and he had worked on a project for the public that and it was a project where it was magicians discussing magic, and the whole idea was to give people a look behind the curtain magic, not exposing the secrets of magic, but just magicians sharing sort of their philosophy about magic, and you know. So I won't say whether it was a book or a newspaper article or magazine thing or what it is because I don't want to I don't want to get into the specifics. But anyways, he uh because we were talking about it, and he was saying that the it it didn't have the reception that he thought it would have, and he says the only reason he thinks it didn't have the reception that he thought it would have is because he's so well known by the magic community. He honestly believed, and we talked about this, like why is this? He honestly believed it would have been more successful if it were an outsider to the magic community, like doing this, like an outsider of the magic community presenting magic. And and I wondered why this was because if you look at some of the most popular published books in magic recently, I don't know, I don't know the numbers. I don't know if they were the most popularly published, but I know they made a fairly big splash in the public perception of magic in their markets. But if you look at books like um, "Fooling Houdini" by Alex Stone and "Magic is Dead" by the author Ian Frisch. These are two books by people who were sort of outside of magic, and it was like an outsider's look into magic. Like, I'm an outsider, I'm going to go into magic and like expose magic, not expose magic, but like I'm going to go in and give you a peek behind the curtain. And they seem to have been published because of that outsider perspective. And I talked to many people about this, and anyways, we were having this conversation, and I was thinking maybe it's because people don't trust magicians. Maybe people don't want to hear what magicians have to say about magic. Maybe it's like a trust thing. Like a magician's never going to really tell you about magic. They're going to talk about it, but it's like people want that sort of like that flashy, catchy thing. Like, I'm going to infiltrate the world of magic and deliver all the secrets. I'm going to break into Aladdin's cave and steal that genie. Like they want, like, it's like that. They don't want somebody. I don't know. It's a weird thing. It's a weird thing because it's like if a magician's just giving you these secrets, giving you this information, it's like the magician, is part of that community. He's bound by a certain code. I mean, I personally haven't found that to be true at all. I find magicians can say and do whatever they want, and there's no backlash. Uh, they could pretty much give away every secret of magic, and nobody will say a word. But anyways, very fascinating, and I thought it was very interesting that this very well respected magician could work so hard on this project and really believe that the project was uh, didn't flourish like it could have because of because of who he was in the magic community, and so you see a lot of this attention. So there's two things because magic is about secret. People want that exposure of secret. They want to get that peek behind the curtain. Um, and if you can do that, you can be very successful as an outsider in magic, showing people a peek in. People also like to see a peek from within. So if you're like an expert, or you can convince people that you are an expert in a field, you can do that. So I think, and I don't know anything about David Kwong, but I will say this one thing, and it has bothered me. I'm just gonna say it because it's bothered me. Like, you have no idea how much it's bothered me. But after he did it, Now You See Me, which was a movie about heists. Yeah, he has this consulting company, Directors Guild, and one of the claims on the website, this was years ago. I don't think it's up anymore. But one of the claims was that they were an expert in this production company was an expert in heist and theft and fraud and all this stuff. And to be quite honest, uh, it was from people from within those industries have told me that was not true, and so I thought that was very deceptive. And like, people use different credentials to sort of boost themselves up. The classic story is a guy like Frank Abagnale. The movie that they made, Catch Me If You Can, with Leonardo DiCaprio, about this con man who's flying around the world with, I think, is it Pan Am or is it American Airlines? And anyways, he's pretending to be a pilot, and he's flying around the world, cashing in fake checks, and doing all this fraud. And they make the movie so dramatic, and the book is very dramatic. And uh, from other people who I know who know him well, they know that the story that he tells in the movie is so romanticized that it almost has nothing to do with reality. Uh, there's reality in it, but it's like it's been so romanticized that it's been turned into a complete fantasy. And and then, like, people take this notoriety, and they're able to build a career off of it. Like, that they're an expert in something that they're not an expert in. So, like, if somebody gets arrested, uh, I mean, for me personally, when I hear about somebody being arrested for something, like, they're not like, they're not the best. They're not the best. If somebody's getting arrested for something, they're not the best. So then you see a guy like Frank Abagnale who, you know, got locked up. Yeah, another guy like Kevin Mitnick, the computer guy, the ghost in the wires. And these guys sort of just build this like fantasy around them, this legend, and they become, myths to this community of people. It's like this industry where nobody really knows what they're like. You have all these industries that are sort of so obscure, and magic is one of them, where it's like there's so many people in it who are talking, but so few of them really know what they're talking about, that it just becomes like this. I don't know. It becomes like a labyrinth to decipher, where it's like you can only really understand what's going on by walking into that mountain and going into that labyrinth and literally spending years of your life deciphering things. And even if you spend years in it, that doesn't mean that you understand anything. There's so many people who I have encountered who have been in magic for like 20, 30, 40 years, and they just don't understand magic. Like they just don't get it. And it's such a weird world. But anyways, back to the book. Because I'm sort of spiraling off topic. Yeah, so interesting. This guy has a show. I'll check it. I'll check out what it's about. It's fascinating to me. Fascinating to me. Um, Truly fascinating. Anyways, uh, so to talk about the book, these are things that magicians use in magic, and anybody would be smart to use. Let's just go over them briefly and talk about them because I think he's right on the overall in this book, and I understand it. Like people, when you are writing these books for business, you kind of want to break everything down. People want certainty, and how do people get certainty? They get certainty by you providing a formula. Like there's somehow a formula to success. If you follow these steps, you will succeed. It's like a recipe. It's like it's almost like a magic spell. You do these steps in these orders, and this good thing will happen. It's like a recipe for food. You put these ingredients into this pot, you stir it together, you heat it up, and it's going to come out and taste good. Uh, and in reality, you know, business doesn't necessarily work like that. Neither does magic. More of an these things are more art than science. I mean, there's definitely scientific principles and analysis that you can apply to them in order to improve your results. But I mean, if it was truly just a formula that anyone could follow, then everyone would follow it. It would be so simple that anyone would follow it and be incredibly successful. And that's not true because markets and companies and corporations and the world sways in different ways and different patterns. And even if you do everything right, doesn't mean that you're going to be successful. Of course, you can help make things in your favor and obviously learn and adapt, but there's no, for me personally, I don't think there's a formula. I think the world changes so quickly that we can't, uh, we can't treat things, we can't treat everything like one thing. Okay, so let's go through this list. Mind the gap. Recognize and employ the perceptual uh, space between your audience's ability to see and their impulse to believe. So this is one thing that magicians do, and pretty much anybody who does storytelling um, does, where it's like people's brains fill in the gaps. When you're watching a movie and you see a scene and like let's say you're watching a movie and two people are in a room and they're having a conversation, it's like, okay, we need to go find this third person to to talk about this. And then you see them, they leave the house, they get into the car, and then you see that it cuts and the scene and the car is pulling up to another building, and then they're getting out, and they go meet the third person. You may not see in the movie them doing the whole drive. Maybe the whole drive would take half an hour, and that half hour doesn't make it on screen because it's not important to the story. That's what sort of happens in magic a lot, where people are understanding the overall narrative and story that's being told, but we're not necessarily showing them everything. So, for example, You might have a deck of cards spread on the table, and it's face up, and uh, you know you show that the cards are mixed or whatever. This is a horrible example. This is a horrible example. Oh man, I can't do this. I can't do this. It's Let me think about it, phrases. Um, Let me give you a different example. Let me give you a different example. Actually, there's no point of even example. I mean, what I'm trying to explain is just so simple. It it kills me. It physically pains me to give you an example. But just imagine uh, this is how people tell stories. This is how people follow things. We do it every day, whether we're reading a novel or we're watching a TV show or we're hearing a conversation. We make jumps in the story. People jump from this to this. It's like, oh, let me tell you, this happened and then this happened, and it's like there may have been a lot of things that happened between this and that, but we don't need every single piece of information. Like, have you ever heard somebody tell a story and they just give you too many details, and like they just are telling you every detail possible, and you're like, get to the point, and you're just like, okay, I get it, get to the point, and then like they're giving you way too much information. You're like, okay, get to the point. Like what happened? And they're taking too long to tell the story. Um, that's bad storytelling. So this whole thing of minding the gap is just like a basic thing. But it's like, okay, what people see and what people understand is happening is what they believe is happening. And, that is sort of a thing that's used and manipulated in magic. We take people's narratives for granted and we manipulate it uh, so that we can show somebody something else at the very end, different than what they thought they were seeing. What they thought they were following is not exactly what they were following. The situation's secretly different than they knew. Uh, so this is something that we use in magic. How is it used in business? Well, I mean, it's the same thing. Like people just follow the narrative. Anyways, load up. The next thing is load up. So prepare to amaze your audience. Uh, when people are doing magic, they are what you would call loaded up many times, and we actually call some of the objects we hide on our bodies loads. Like if somebody's hiding something on their body, we'll call it a load. Like maybe somebody will magically produce a dove or a bottle of wine or something in the show, or a bottle of beer, and it's hidden somewhere on their person, and they're going to magically produce it. They're going to move in a way that you would have no idea that they're holding this object on their body, and they're going to produce it in a magic way. That's what we would call a load. And how do you have a load? You prepare before the show. You load up. I don't know if load up is a term used in magic, but you pretty much get ready, and you can do this in many ways. Some of these are physical loads. You actually have stuff hidden on your body. Other stuff that you can prearrange is things that are happening with the audience, things that are happening with objects. For example, you could have a deck of cards that's prearranged in a specific order, so that you can perform tricks in a specific order. Um, and if you're doing a show and you're doing it in order, the deck can be set up so that you can just go from one piece of magic to another. If you're really good, you can sort of jump from one effect to another without having everything set up in a linear setup. You can sort of move and dance with that. A great guy doing this is Rene Lavon, who played with prearrangements. So there's a bunch of ways to use this. I mean, loading up, but basically the idea behind it is prepare for whatever it is that you're doing. Most of anything in life, whether it's magic or business, is based on preparation. And preparation, truly preparation. Preparation is one thing. I wouldn't say preparation is the most important thing. You need to be prepared, but the truest form of preparation comes from experience. When you are experienced in something, you don't really need to prepare because you've been preparing your whole life. So, for example, like if you know, let's say I'm home right now and I knew somebody was coming to my house, and it's like, okay, and somebody told me, yeah, yeah, I'd love to see you perform something. Could I prepare something? Yeah, I could prepare something. I could physically prepare something, but maybe the preparation for me is just going through my experiences and thinking what would be good for that person. I think the more experience you have, the less experience you have, the more physical preparation that you're making, because that's you're physically preparing to overcome your uh, your lack of experience. And the more experience you have, the more that you're just preparing mentally. Like you're just mentally prepared. And when you're mentally prepared, you don't really have to physically prepare as much. In many cases, some cases you do. Maybe it means you'll have to do more physical preparation. But yeah, it's interesting. Experience is preparation. Well, very weird concept that is just sort of coming to my mind right now. I don't think I've ever had that thought before. Never heard that thought expressed. Maybe I have, but I don't remember. Anyways, very interesting. Obviously, this is very simple stuff, and it can be attributed to business. 3, write the script. Discover the importance of shaping the narrative that surrounds your illusion. So uh, this is one of the things that bothers me about people who write about business or cheating, like card cheating, in relation to magic and business and cheating don't really match, because when you're talking about business, like, yeah, you need a script. You're talking about magic show, yes, you need a script, but you're not really building. You're in magic. You're sort of building an illusion. You're building a narrative, a deception, really, and um, it's designed in a very different way than a business script. A business script is honest. You're not deceiving anyone. I mean, if you're deceiving somebody in your business, if you're creating an illusion in your script for your business, then your business is really a scam. You, I mean, why would you be lying to your clients? So I don't know, stuff like that bothers me whenever I see magic and business being written together, because it makes people feel like, oh, if you can use deception for magic and it's not immoral because it's entertaining people and you're not scamming people, maybe you can apply these to other things. And it's like, it doesn't really work that way. Like I don't know. But yeah, you should script things out. Script things out. Um, Not so much that you are a robot, but understand the spirit of the script. What I like to call the spirit of the script. Every script has a spirit, and um, yeah, you want it to, you want it to be understood in that way. Let's see here. Um, the next one is control the frame. Explore the real life value of magician's best friend, misdirection. Uh, controlling the frame is important in everything you do. I mean, just think about somebody with a camera. You only can record what's in frame, and you only show people what's in frame. This can be very positive because you have control over the story that you tell by controlling the frame. And you put everything into a box. And like a frame is like what I'm in right now. Like you can see a background here, you can see an edge of a seat here. Is this a seat? Is this a couch? You don't really know. What is around me in this room? You're not really sure because I'm controlling the frame. I'm showing you something from one angle. Maybe the rest of this room is a mess. You have no idea. I'm controlling the frame. When you're doing this in business and in magic, it's because you want to everyone to focus on something. It's not necessarily because you're trying to hide stuff. It's just because you're trying to make people focus on things. And I hate the word misdirection in magic because misdirection is like it's one of the it's a horrible word in magic. I prefer the word direction. You're a director. You're controlling. You're like a movie director or stage director. You're controlling what people see. What do you want people to see? What are you putting on stage? What are you putting in the frame? You're a director. You're not misdirecting people. Misdirecting people is taking people's attention away from something, and very rarely are you doing that. Usually, you're making people's attention go somewhere where you want their attention to go. You're not taking their attention away from something. You're bringing their attention to a different place because you can't really misdirect somebody. Like that doesn't work as a concept. Uh, the more you try to take somebody's attention off something, the more interested they'll be on it. It's like if I told you right now that I wasn't wearing any pants. Like I am wearing pants, but if I told you I wasn't wearing any pants, and I was like going like this and like moving the camera up and down, and you'd be like, "Oh, is he wearing pants? Is he not wearing pants?" You'd be like focused on that. It's like, "Oh, don't look at me! Don't look at me! I'm, I don't have any pants on." Everybody would look, and you come out on stage. You're like, it's like imagine if you come into the back of a theater and everybody's watching the screen, and you start yelling, "Nobody look at me! I'm not wearing any pants! I'm not wearing any pants! There, nobody look!" Of course, everybody would look. So that's sort of how I imagine the word misdirection, where it's like it's so funny. It's like let's take somebody's attention off something. That's not how it works. You take somebody's attention off something by putting their attention somewhere else. You direct them. You are the director. You're controlling the frame. Number five, design free choice. Command your audience by giving them agency. Yeah, I would say this is a good thing for business as well. So in Magic, often we give people choices, but sometimes their free choices are not really choices. Uh, and in business, you sometimes, especially in sales, you're sort of doing the same thing. Like instead of asking the client, like the prospective client, are you interested in this product or are you not interested? You would say to the prospective client, do you like the first option better or do you like the second option? Which one do you prefer? Like which one really excites you? Which one do you like? Which one do you like more? What you like? Like you would build up on what they liked. You wouldn't, you have these similar things, but like all these things can be sort of misused and abused. Number six, employ the familiar. Take secret advantage of habits, patterns, and audience expectations. So this is what happens in Magic. Most people are used to certain movements, and uh, you are taking advantage of that in magic in many ways. Just by uh, through the narrative of you removing stuff from your pockets, putting stuff on the table, like you're doing stuff that looks normal, but you could be hiding other stuff behind it. There could be a second invisible narrative that is underneath the visual current, and um, like you can almost consider it subliminal messaging in a way. Well, not it works the same way, sort of, where it's like you're seeing one thing, but then there's really the real purpose is another thing. It's like when somebody gives you a Trojan horse. When they give it in the story of the uh, the Odyssey, not the Odyssey, the Iliad, and it's like, here's this gift, and it's like, oh, it's not a gift. Well, it is a gift. They're getting a gift, but the real purpose of the gift is it's filled with enemy soldiers, and they're gonna, kill everyone. Uh, yeah, employ the familiar. Yeah, I mean, all this stuff is very basic. The last one, conjure an out, develop backup plans that will keep one, two, or three more steps ahead of the competition. Obviously, you want to have a backup plan. So, anyways, all this stuff is kind of weird because it's like, let's use these secrets of magic and apply them to business, and it kind of makes sense. It kind of does, to be quite honest. It kind of does, but it doesn't in the same way. I really don't think there's a lot of overlap between magic and business. I think there's overlap between the business of magic and other businesses, but generally, not every principle is universal. And I say that even though I don't believe it. I believe at the highest level, the principles are universal, but you wouldn't be able to attain that level of mastery by reading a book on the subject. Like one of my favorite books is from uh, a swordsman, Miyamoto Musashi, who was the greatest swordsman who ever lived, and he he fought in over 60 duels, life and death. And besides swordsmanship, he also studied uh, calligraphy. He did paintings. He did carpentry. He did a few things like that. And he would talk about in his book about the universality of things. But the way that he described it, and the way that I truly believe it works, is when you really attain a level of mastery in one thing, like beyond, like a level that's so high, like you're at the highest level in one thing, your mastery of that allows you to understand other things at a deeper level. When you master one thing, you can master many things because everything is the same in the end. But to claim that everything is the same without knowing one thing, you can't. If you can know one thing, you can almost know everything. But to know that one thing is the hardest thing in the world. So to say that everything is the same and everyone can know everything without knowing any one thing, I think is a disaster. Sorry for getting a little too Japanese on you. But yeah, it really does work that way. So I understand it, but like, although all these things are sort of universally applicable, the level of mastery that you have to attain in one subject for you to be able to understand how to apply your knowledge, what you really know, to something else is so high that you can't teach it in a book. That's my biggest problem with a lot of these books, which is it's like, let me give you this cursory overlook about this field that you know nothing about, and you're going to take these principles and apply it to something else. And it doesn't really make sense, you know. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't like it. It doesn't make sense to me, but some people do. Overall, this is not a bad book. It's not a bad book. I just disagree with the overall idea of uh, of introducing people to a subject and then trying to get them to learn how to do everything based on examples. Uh, it just doesn't translate well. It's kind of deceptive. Like people can be enlightened by it, they can be inspired, but they're not going to have a deep understanding of what you cannot transmit what it is that you're trying to transmit because they don't know what you're talking about. And one of the greatest failures, for example, like Musashi's book in Japanese, the Book of Five Rings, uh, translated, and just like the Art of War by Sun Tzu, and the just like those, just like that book as well. It's been used by business people all over the world to try to apply concepts of warfare to business. Uh, they tried to take that philosophy of war and apply it to business. And overall, you can sort of understand why they would want to do this because the principles are very similar in the way in one way, but because they don't understand warfare, like they can't take the principles of warfare and apply it to business. Like, why not just teach it as principles of business instead of principles of warfare? Unless you were somebody involved in warfare, unless you were somebody involved in magic at a high level, very hard to fully understand the lessons that people are trying to share. It just doesn't translate. It's very hard to understand. So, anyways, that's my thought on it. Um, there's a few books like this that have been written. And to be quite honest, I much prefer when people don't try to impart knowledge. Even Mushashi, in his wisdom, he said that he could not capture he could not express the things that he wanted to express in his writings. Even after he wrote his book, which was to his student, he knew that he had failed. He couldn't capture what he knew and put it in writing. He tried, but he even wrote. It's not what it could be. Um, so it's like you think about somebody who's a master in that one thing, who had and who had so much awareness that they knew, okay, I can't really transfer this knowledge this way. I can't do it. It kind of shows you. And teaching somebody is the hardest thing in the world. To be able to impart knowledge means you have to understand it at a higher level than you need to just be able to function with that information. You look at the people who, most of the people who are some of the top fighter pilots in the U.S., they could never become instructors at Top Gun. To become an instructor at Top Gun, you have to be at such a high level because you actually have to explain what you know. You need to be able to give what you know to somebody else. And that is much harder than knowing something. You can know something and you can know how to do it, you can know how to use it, you can know how to make it work, but to be able to know how to give somebody that as well is much more difficult than just knowing something for yourself. Uh, Teaching somebody and imparting knowledge is much more difficult than having knowledge and being able to use it yourself. So, with a lot of these books, you find problems in that respect where Even if somebody might know something about a subject, they can't. They're trying to give this information out, but nobody can use it because there's too much of a gap. They can't. They can't understand it. Uh, so I don't think people will be able to learn lessons and be able to apply them in magic the way that they think. It's like the people who are trying to use lessons from war and apply them to business. You're like, yeah, you get the concept. It makes sense. It makes sense, but it's a lot harder to do than you would imagine because, you know, war is very complicated, as is business. Uh, and to think that you can just grab things and put them here and there and it will work is, you know, kind of silly in a way. So, anyways, just my thoughts on the book. It's a book I read recently, and yeah, I just wanted to share some of my thoughts on it. If you do end up reading it, let me know what you think, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Hoping that the next book that we do is History of Magic because I'm working my way through it. It's really good. I'm actually really looking forward to talking about it because it's the book by Jim Steinmeier on magic history. I really like it, to be honest. I'm really liking it so far. Um, all right. Have a good one. Enjoy your day and happy holidays. Thanks for watching.